if you're upsetting people on LinkedIn, and I don't, there's ways to upset people. I don't mean upsetting people for the sake of upsetting people, but if you're sharing something controversial that a lot of people are going to disagree with, that's great content. That's going to get noticed.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Recruitment Podcast by Recruit CRM. I'm back, it's Kate O'Neill, your host, and I'm bringing you today another really insightful conversation with somebody who is changing the game in the recruitment world. So today's episode is all about standing out in a sea of sameness, because there's a lot of people out there at the moment doing everything the same, pretty much. So if you've ever felt stuck, doing the same old thing, getting the same old results, then you are going to love today's guest, because we are talking about doing things a lot differently. So joining me today is Matt Kirk.
I don't know whether it's a better way. I don't know whether I do things a better way. It's just a different way to do it. So I don't do any of the normal activities. I started working for myself April last year, and I've been doing architecture recruitment for well over a decade, and I came out of it during the pandemic and went and did IT tech recruitment for a bit, and I decided I wanted to go back to it and start myself again. So I started working self-employed last April, and I knew marketing wise I wanted to do something different, because I'm brand wise, because I've been dabbling before in that for years and years before. But the first month, I picked up work very quickly, very easily. And the first month phoning around candidates, it was odd, because all of a sudden, even people that I knew, and I think a lot of recruiters experience this, they just didn't want to speak to me. I'm picking up the phone, and I'm great on the phone. Historically, that's how I've done all my business, my best years, £250,000 in billings and all that kind of thing. It all came from picking up the phone and doing the normal activities of recruiters. But I just noticed, and I noticed it a little bit in tech as well, that people didn't really want to speak to me. They didn't really want to be sold to. They didn't really want to be caught unawares. And I was just doing that grind that most recruiters will very much recognize. And I just felt like it wasn't working. I was making lists of 20 people that I needed to call every evening after work so I can catch them when they're not in work. I'd even try some of them in the day. I tried them all. And, out of lists of 20, 30, 40, 50, 80 candidates, I was getting a handful of half decent conversations, not even that, but I was spending hours and hours and hours trying to do it that way, and it wasn't working. And, I decided very, very quickly, so what by May, that I wasn't going to do that anymore. That I need to rely entirely on the brand, on the social media, on the copywriting, on a completely different set of activities.
Well, no, I like it. So I'm going to go into detail on a lot of this different stuff today, because I think for anybody listening, there's a lot of people out there that I do think genuinely do want to stand out, but they just don't know how. So we'll cover all that off today. But I think as recruiters, it is very easy to fall into that trap of just doing what everybody else does. And I look back at my career, and I know I did it, especially early on. You get told to do something one way, you do it every day, you're sending the same messages, trawling the same job boards, but hoping for different results by just doing the same as everybody else. And you've obviously made it clear that being different is very possible and brings very good results. So that's what I'm going to be questioning you around today, so people can kind of learn from that and start to do things differently themselves, basically. So you've been pretty vocal about what's wrong with the way most recruiters operate. So what do you think are the biggest cliches, biggest mistakes that recruiters fall into?
Well, that's funny, because I've got a list, haven't I? I've got a list of how recruiters market themselves, and it was kind of in preparation for this, but it's stuff that we'll all recognise, right? So this is what everyone says when you go on the website, or when you look at the LinkedIn profile, or even when you speak to them. If anyone ever gets asked, what's your USP? It's not very unique. Your unique selling point. It's not normally very unique. It's normally one of these things, right? So we're specialists. Everyone says the specialists, don't they? Even the big ones have specialist divisions, and they're the specialists. Oh yeah, I mean, they all say it. We can, on top of that, we can do everything anywhere, which isn't very specialist.
It's not specialist then, is it?
Yeah, at any volume. So everyone says it, right? We're specialists, but we can do everything, anywhere, anytime, any volume, right? Even though we're tiny, even though we're massive. We work in a special way. We work somehow differently. Never once have I seen someone go into detail about how they work differently. We understand our clients. That's a big one. That's how we work. We get to know or understand. Every single website will say the same thing.
Job.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they all say, right? So we have loads of experience is another way that people, we've been doing this for 10 years, 15 years. Reputation, I mean, that's not as common, but people do say, we've got a reputation, people know us, which is actually quite useful, probably the best one in here. People talk about the results that they've got the clients. It's rare you even see case studies on that. Yeah, and it'd be so easy to even make up the case studies.
Yeah, it probably is a lot of the time.
Yeah, but no one does, no one bothers. Everyone's too lazy to make that up. And a lot of stuff is geared towards clients when I don't know, like I'm a technical recruiter, right? A white collar technical recruiter. I've got no issue with getting clients, none whatsoever. I've got massive issues getting candidates in a candidate short market. My websites and things like that, they're generally not geared towards clients. Clients, what the clients want of us, they want us to know that we've got the candidates, right? So I think the recruitment industry as a whole needs to refocus itself towards candidates, and the clients will come.
Yeah.
And the final one that I noted down is that everyone is somehow different. We're different than every other recruiter, and everyone says that.
We do things differently here. Yeah. That's a standard.
Just we're different, right? In whatever way they say it, we're different. But everyone does the same activities. Everyone's largely got the same database. Everyone uses the same job boards. Everyone copies and pastes the same job ads from ChatGPT or wherever it is they do.
Yeah.
And I think, starting there is a good point. Starting there is a good point to say, well, the only way to be different is to do absolutely none of that. Don't say any of those things. Don't say you're different. Nowhere on my website does it say I'm different. Nowhere in my stuff does it say I'm different, but I'm called the annoying recruiter. And there's a picture of me, my head on Rambo's body, firing CVs from a machine gun, execs in the jungle on my website. I think it's pretty clear that I'm different.
So we've talked about kind of people saying they're different and what that means, but and we have touched on some of these things already, but I know there's more that you do. What does being different really mean to you in the context of recruitment in your business?
Well, so first off, the only thing I really advertise is that I don't do any of the activities that a normal recruiter does. I rely on other things, right? But I suppose it comes down to your brand, and I've been looking up the definition of brand quite a lot recently, and there's lots of different ones. And the best one I've come across is, your brand is a set of unique qualities that identify you. And since everyone does the exact same stuff, and I do it very slightly differently, it's fairly easy to point out what I do different. You can tell who I am. Candidates in my industry know who I am when they're reading a job advert. If they've not seen my logo, if they've not seen my name on it, they'll be able to tell it's me because the job ad is written in a certain way, and it's written from their point of view. It's not this award-winning amazing company. It is, this is what you're going to get out of this company, if you know what I mean. So, even down to the very basics of that, there's stuff different. But, even, the most obvious thing, what do I do different? My business is called The Annoying Recruiter. Like, I don't need to say that I'm different. It is completely different. Yeah. That self-deprecation is something that, I think a lot of recruiters appreciate and find funny. I know that because I get so many messages in my inbox and LinkedIn. I think a lot of people want to be like me. Not every brand has to be just you be yourself, but that is mine. I don't sugarcoat absolutely anything to anyone. I call my millionaire clients mate or swear at them 100 times down the phone while I'm talking to them. There's no pressure for me to please anyone, and I don't feel that pressure. So that's kind of what it means to me, when it comes back to everything. People know what they're getting. Nobody's going to contact the annoying recruiter and get in touch with them if they don't expect, a certain level of the other person on the other end not being professional and not being, not being boring, essentially. That's what it means
Yeah.
to me, I suppose. That's what it
And I
means. That's what
think I think then you naturally gravitate or attract the type of client, the type of candidate that is right for you to work with,
yeah,
because
you do.
you're not forcing any. I mean, if I look back to when I've been employed in agencies and I was younger and I felt like I had to be,
Yeah,
especially at the start when you start working with somebody, especially client side, you've got to be this certain way. And then once you start relaxing, I used to find like once I started to relax and felt more confident to let my
yeah,
real self out,
yeah.
sometimes I would just, the relationships would just go out of, like, would get so much stronger because they actually liked me just being myself.
Of course you do.
But I felt this pressure from the type of agency I was in to be this corporate-y, I don't know, like professional woman who like
Of course.
wears a suit, a skirt
Yeah.
suit and a blazer, and is like, but that's not me.
No. I mean, and people recognize that on the other end of the phone or face to face or whatever. You know, one of the biggest complaints that I get about other recruiters in that recruiting my niche is that they all sound like robots. They come across
Yeah.
like robots, you know, and you know, I can see that. I've seen it. I've been in the offices, I've been in large companies and small businesses, you know, and they are, you know, it feels like they're reading from a script. It feels like they're going through a process. That's what it feels like to people. So
Yeah.
again, you're just doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing, and you started doing the opposite of what everyone else was doing, and you know you get success off the back of it by doing the complete opposite.
Yeah.
That's the only way you be
So,
different, isn't it? Right? Just do the complete opposite of what everyone else is doing.
well, also as well, like without sounding too cheesy, everyone worries about like standing out from competition. There's literally like 200,000 of recruitment agencies in the UK. Imagine how many consultants. So all you need to do, there's not another you anywhere, like anywhere else. So actually, you need to capitalize on that and just show more of you.
Yeah.
Because no one, they can try and copy it, but they'll never be like, no. Somebody could literally try and copy your brand on LinkedIn, but they're never going to be able to truly do it because they haven't got your brain, they haven't got your personality. Do you know what I mean? So
No, but it's
a
not
lot
probably
of
not
the
a bad
time, that's how
place
you
to
do it.
start. It might not be a bad place to start, right? Because my idols when I was experimenting by about 2016-ish with, you know, a different brand and a different persona online, my idols were people like probably Mitch Sullivan is a good example, because back then he was a lot more vocal than he is right now and caused a bit of a stir quite a lot, you know. And I'm not saying I emulated that, but that was a good example. And you know, my voice might have been closer to what Mitch's voice was back then. You know, and you can identify it yourself when it doesn't ring true a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so you can start moving towards your own. You've just got to start somewhere, even if that's emulating someone like me. You know, and I get messages from people all the time on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, I love what you do," or "I saw that post that you did that, you know, got all those likes, and you know, just wanted to say that was brilliant." And the next thing I see that person post is a copy, or is something, you know, a very similar, something different to what they've ever done before. And you can tell it doesn't really work. But if they carry on going in 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, it might start clicking. Actually, it might start working for them, and it'll be their own version. They'll start working out what works.
Can you give an example then of what maybe people would see as like an unconventional approach that you've taken maybe recently and that's worked?
I mean, everything I do is pretty unconventional, down from the messaging that I do to the. I mean, I a couple of times recently I've dressed up as a woman on a video, and
I was going to say, can you please talk about the videos? Because honestly, I've watched them probably more than 5 times each. They're so funny. They're so funny.
I'm glad you think that. You know, and luckily a lot of candidates and clients think that as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you rock the
I'm
leopard
turning
print.
some
Was it
people
leopard
off.
print, the dress?
The leopard print dress. I mean, that's just I've worn a couple of different leopard print dresses and wigs, and you know, done a lady's voice quite a few times.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, you know, if I want my activities to do, you know, if I say I do a different set of activities, I want results from them. You know, I want eyes on the copy that I'm writing for my job ad. So, you know, what better way than doing something like dressing up as a woman or dressing up as Rambo and rolling around in the Lake District for a day with your mates?
Or the Karate Kid.
or Karate Kid, yeah. And we're getting other people that are fairly influential on LinkedIn, like Ross Sullivan involved. I met Ross on LinkedIn and we're good mates now. It's completely off the wall, slightly crazy stuff, but who's not going to be entertained by it? Who isn't going to be entertained by it? And, I don't need to tell the world that I'm different. I'm doing, like I say, I'm doing very, very different activities because, believe it or not, those mad videos get seen by a lot more people than those you've seen people doing corporate videos. You think of a recruiter video and you're thinking of a guy or a girl, standing in front of the camera, talking to the camera, telling you about how great this job is and what way they need to be.
Reading a
script, right? And do they get any engagement? Do they actually fill jobs off the back of it? No, they don't. I do get candidates and clients coming to me every time I make a mad video. Every time.
And I think as well, a lot of the time those videos, not only are they kind of a bit stale in the way they're done, so you're not really getting to know the person, there's no sort of flair, but also half the time I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, your target market isn't on this platform.
No.
So, or it could be the client side or it could be the candidate side or both. But I'm thinking, you could have posted that on Facebook or wherever. And I think the only people liking it then are all their colleagues. So it's circling into the wrong audiences. And it's like, you're not getting the idea of this. Posting is not like, oh, I posted today, tick. You talked then about you're looking to get results out of everything that you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people forget as well is, I'm trying to get this result. So what can I do to get that result? How can I do it differently? Not just ticking a box. Like you've got to think about, are you getting a return from it?
It is definitely a tick box for a lot of people. You're so right. Are people expecting when they do those videos that we just talked about, massive reactions? And you're right. Are there candidates and clients on LinkedIn? I mean, they probably are for a lot of people, right? For white collar, they're probably on LinkedIn, but is it getting enough attention for it for those people to find it? Probably not. So there's no point in doing it. You might as well not do it. And that's I need something tangible out of everything. And I started off. I started off trying to do something a bit different, and it was a long time ago. I deleted a lot of posts because I thought, well, that is not. It's got to be of a certain standard. If it comes down to it, is that going to get the attention that I want it to get from the people that I want it to get? And if the answer was, even if the answer was maybe, it wasn't going out.
Yeah.
Simple as that. It wasn't going out. And usually it was, and like I say, what's led me to the brand to what I do now, and the brand that I've got now is the unconventional stuff really was always, the answer is yes. The answer is it's going to get a lot of attention, and the right people are going to see it. And I'm probably going to get inbound traffic, whether it be candidates or clients or anything else.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, so we know in recruitment as well, partly what makes people, it's not just work with you, but, the longevity, client or candidate, they want to be able to trust us. And that is really, really important. How do you make sure that trust comes across in your work, in everything you do?
I mean, that is probably one of the most difficult things, especially for a recruiter, because we've all got when people think recruiter, trust is not the first thing that comes to the mind, in the same way as it doesn't with an estate agent or for solicitors. For a lot of people, you feel like they're in it for yourself. So that is the big one, isn't it? Getting people to trust you. And I don't think you get it by asking people to trust you or by saying I'm trustworthy. It's like, again, we're into that push and pull selling type area, aren't we? And the more you try and get people to trust you, the less people got to trust you. The more you kind of you vocal about it. I don't do anything. People do trust me. Some activities that might have worked for in the past are, I recruit for architecture, the architectural industry, right? I know very, very well what people's issues and problems are, right? That not many people talk about vocally. It's a very, 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 people will be surprised to find out it's a very low paid profession with a very
I was really shocked when you told me that.
Yeah. Oh, extremely low. I mean, most architects are probably on about half of what most people think they're probably on, if not less.
Yeah.
And, it goes for everyone else in that industry as well. That's just one example, right? But there's lots of problems. There's a massive culture in certain parts of the UK and certain practices of, you know, this hustle culture of overwork, and you're doing 80 hours a week. You only get paid for your 37. Don't get me wrong, but they're still in the office at, you know, midnight on a Friday. They're coming in on Saturdays and Sundays. That is reality for a lot of people in the industry. And, you know, most people are too scared to say something about it, aren't they? But if I put my hand up and say, a funny video last week about someone handing the notice in and getting all the promises in the world or whatever it is, then I think I'm not asking anyone to trust me, but I'm telling them that I understand them straight away.
Yeah, they feel heard.
Yeah, they feel heard, and it's giving them that feeling of trust. I don't think you can specifically go after trust from candidates or clients or from, you know,
you've just got to deliver on what you say, and that's what a lot of recruiters don't do. So they'll promise candidates the world, won't they, for example, or it happens on the client side as well. But I think that's why I've always found a lot of candidates initially might be a bit wary, but once they see that you're delivering, like, so you say you can do something, you do it, they're initially almost shocked, and then it's like, oh, okay, I can trust this person. So your actions show them everything that they need to know, doesn't it?
I think you're right. I think if you're set up in the way you work and in your marketing and your brand and everything, if you're set up to deliver, you know, and you don't brag about it, then I think, you know, the trust will come naturally on its own, you know. But again, you need to be seen by people as well, so you need to find ways to be seen in the first place, you know, again, without saying, you know, we are trustworthy, we are different, because the second you say we're different, you're not different, because everyone says they're different. Everyone says they're trustworthy. Everyone says they do their best work for the candidate's clients. You know, you can't say those things because you're selling. You are selling, and people don't like being sold to.
No, and you know, I would even encourage. So I work with candidates that are going into recruitment. You know, one of the questions I'd be getting them to ask is things like, you know, ask them, like, how are you different? When they say, if you've got any questions at the end of your interview, ask them, like, how are you different to other recruitment agencies? Put them on the spot with it. I know these people are my clients, but like, you need to discover that for yourself and learn, is there different? You're different. Like, are you
Everyone's going to have an answer. The annoying thing is, everyone's going to have an answer to that, and it's identifying, is there a good answer? And
is it genuine? You can sense it when people say it.
Is it the values? Look at our values. That's how we're different. Yeah, you know, or something like that. That's not different. If you've got values, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not different at all to any other recruiter.
No. Well, speaking of different and standing out, I'm just going to do a cheeky little Recruit CRM plug. But all jokes aside, I've said this on every episode, I use this as my CRM. So I'm not just saying it's great. All the features that I've spoken about in each episode so far are things that I know are great because I do it every day. I'm using it myself. So, and we all know that, you know, having the right tools on hand, if you want to utilize them, can make a difference to how you work. So I think for me, and I'm not a huge techie person, I can use the tech, but I haven't got all the bells and whistles and all these different apps on for my recruitment business on my phone, things like that. So I do quite like simple and straightforward. And I do find that with Recruit CRM, it's very intuitive. It's very easy to use. I haven't had to read an instruction manual to get what I need out of it. But there's a lot of sort of AI powered tools that aren't overwhelming, that make it very easy and time efficient, and helps me save time so I can focus on building relationships, spending time speaking to candidates, speaking to clients, having meetings over lots of admin processes that are taking up too much time. So things like follow-ups, automated follow-ups, setting tasks so I don't forget to do things like check in with candidates or make a business development call. There's live chat where I can get help with things. So it just helps me to stay organized, work efficiently, keep things simple and straightforward, not overcomplicate things that we don't need to in recruitment. If you are listening to this and you want a demo, you can have a demo for free. All you've got to do is go to recruitcrm.io, or there should be links in the captions of the podcast. Book a demo, have a play around with it, and then you can decide whether you want to work with it, basically. But I would if I was you. Right, let's come back to some more questions. So I find with the recruiters, I spend a lot of time with recruiters of all different experience levels and business owners.
Yeah.
But what I find a lot of people struggle with is this word creativity in their roles. So I think a lot of people think being creative is like artistic, and I don't always see it that way. There's lots of different ways of being creative. How did you start doing things differently and being more creative? Because I think people can really take a lot from that they can go and kind of get started and apply themselves.
Yeah. I mean, so when I first started posting a long time ago, I came up with something. I think we talked to me before about, there being a certain level to, I wouldn't let something go out unless I thought it was going to perform a certain way. What that came down to, I worked out, was I can be one of three things. I can be funny, I can be controversial, or I can be very, very, very interesting, right? It's really difficult to be very interesting. I could only do that. 1 in 10 of my posts are something interesting. The rest are funny or controversial. And, that is a very, very, very loose framework to start with, right? You can apply, the process I tend to go through is, architects are my candidates and clients. What is an architect's experience in this world? What's that conversation I've just had? What's just happened? That person's been counter-offered, right? From a company in a ridiculous situation where they've been underpaid. They've had a 20 grand counter-offer. Let's start there, right? That's your basis to start creating more interesting content. Whether you make it funny, whether you make it controversial, or whether you make it very, very interesting, you can take it down any of those paths.
Yeah, and I think the interesting bit I can relate to, as you were saying that then, I was like, actually, I remember when I started doing, so I used to have a company do my social media for me when I started my coaching business, and I decided to take it over in August last year because I wanted to be more authentic.
Yeah.
And my social media has gone off the scales since then.
Of course it has.
But I remember thinking, right, well, they used to do, some personal content, some industry content, news content, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, let's try and replicate initially. And do you know what I really struggled with? And I don't do it anymore. It's very rarely you will ever see me post any industry news, as in like an article.
I was going to say,
because I can't, I know this sounds awful. I love the recruitment industry, but I'm reading these articles and I'm like, this isn't interesting. This is boring. Yeah, this is boring. I'm not finding this interesting. Yeah. And I'm just regurgitating someone else's article. And I stopped doing it because I was like, I'm not enjoying writing this. This is not something I'm interested in. Yeah. And I'm not getting any engagement because it's showing in the post. So stop doing it.
Unless it is interesting, funny, or controversial, it is not the article itself, and you've got a really interesting, controversial, funny take on it. It is not going to be useful or interesting. It's not going to be a good thing to post. And you're right. If you go to a company to manage your social media or the wrong one, they're going to do, here's the news post this week. Here's the candidate post. Here's the client post. And I think that is probably the wrong approach to take, especially when it comes to creativity. Listen, most. The answer to this question is most recruiters who've been at it for more than a couple of years, the longer the better, know and understand the industry that they're recruiting for. Can you satirize that? Or do you have some very interesting take on it? Or can you say something very controversial? And and controversial can be supportive at the same time. That's the kind of approach that I take.
I've done a couple of posts.
Here's some professions that are paid better than architects, starting with postman. Nothing wrong with that. Whatever it is. That's probably quite controversial compared to what most people are doing, right? It's a good starting place.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, I'm naturally quite an opinionated person, and the ones where I've shared an opinion on something I'm passionate about, and that passion's come through. Okay, I've known there's going to be some people on LinkedIn that won't agree with this, but whatever. Yeah. And I've shared it, and you'd be surprised then the amount, I don't know if you find this, people come out of the woodwork that feel confident to agree. They've always had this opinion, but they're like, oh my God, somebody's been brave to post it.
And that's it. You just said something there. There's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with this. If you're upsetting people on LinkedIn, and I don't, there's ways to upset people. I don't mean upsetting people for the sake of upsetting people. But if you're sharing something controversial that a lot of people are going to disagree with, that's great content. That's going to get noticed. The people are going to complain about it. The people that are going to agree with you. There's going to be arguments in your comments.
There's going to be passion.
Exactly. You're going to be seen. That's great content. That that's the kind of thing that builds trust, like we were talking about. That's the kind of thing that makes people realize that you're different, because nobody else is doing that. So again, we go back to everyone's saying they're different, but they're not doing anything different. How often do you see a recruiter in any industry start sparking up a proper debate like that? I mean, it does happen, but not very often. It's a way of saying I'm different without actually saying it. It's a way of being different without actually telling the world that you are different.
Right, well, look, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, but we have come to the end. It's been really good to get your perspective on, well, everything in the industry, but I think it's what more people need to hear about, basically, because there are people out there that do want to be themselves more, change at what they're doing, but hearing somebody talk about it and bring it to life is going to be really helpful. So to anyone that's listened, make sure you check out Matt's LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn mostly, aren't you? I know you've got Instagram, but would you say LinkedIn's the best place to link up?
LinkedIn's where I get everything.
LinkedIn. I advise you very strongly to do that, because the content is amazing. There's some very funny videos and posts that go out. And also it's just going to give you an idea of what he's talking about as well. And also you've got all my links as well in the bottom, so you feel free to connect with me. My website addresses are in there. If you are ready to change things up in terms of the CRM that you're using, I know I talked about some of the features earlier, head over to recruitcrm.io. You can explore the tools, you can book a free demo, as I said earlier in the podcast. But thank you so much for tuning in to the Recruitment Podcast by Recruit CRM. Don't miss our next episode, where I've got another amazing guest on with me, a fellow Welshie, Katrina Raposo, and we are talking about the importance of a positive mindset, resilience in life, and recruitment. Katrina, I'm not just saying it, has got a really inspiring story. I've never known somebody to go through so many challenges and just build such an amazing career. So do not miss out on the next episode. Thank you all for listening today, and I will see you next time.